Welcome to the Eclectic Gamers Podcast. Today is Sunday, May 12th. This is episode 219. I'm Tony.
I'm Dennis. We're having a fun discussion with Little Shop of Horrors, but
Little Shop of Horrors.
That's the only fun thing that's going to be mentioned in this episode, because the rest of this is going to be the bleak blackness of the dark side.
It is.
Oh,
wow! This has been. Yeah, it's
interesting,
been rough.
Hasn't it? Yeah. So, what's been going on over the last couple of weeks for you, Tony?
The last couple of weeks have been a massive car repairs. The wife's car broke down, so she started driving my van. So I started driving my old pickup that we hadn't gotten rid of yet, and then my old pickup broke down. And I had to order parts,
which is why you had the van, so you wouldn't have to drive the pickup,
right? So I had to order parts to get the pickup running because we weren't going to be able to get her car's still not fixed. We're supposed to get it finished today.
What about your eldest's vehicle?
Oh, the motor's blown.
Oh, okay, so that one's out too. All right,
that one.
In case people are keeping, I imagine there's like a bingo card of the Tony vehicle fleet, and they're marking them all.
In all technicality, I own 4 vehicles, but one of them needs to be hauled off because the motor blew, and then the other one has been relegated down to just the occasional driver because it needs like $5,000 worth of work, and it's not worth it for something that has almost 300,000 miles on it. So since it's the pickup truck, I'm just using it to haul stuff to the dump every now and then.
Stick
and
truck.
as the spare. Stick truck. That's what I've started calling it since you started.
That's what my dad
stick
calls
truck.
His backup truck. Stick truck.
So it's basically just the backup and hauling stuff to the dump. And other than that, it's just been a whirlwind of like busy days and nights and lots of stuff going on. And we're getting to the end of the school year, so all of the crazy's going. My eldest is taking a bunch of AP classes, which apparently translates into finals that are like 4+ hour long multi-section finals.
Wow. I just don't remember well enough anymore. I had some AP classes back in the day.
Yeah, no, she had like a final that started when school started and got out at lunchtime, and that was one final.
Wow.
And it's like, woo, that's rough. So, no, we've just been busy. I am an early to bed, early riser.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to go to sleep maybe 9-ish. But almost every day, this last week especially, I rarely got to bed before 10 or 10:30. It's been insane. Unfortunately, my body still makes me wake up at 3:30 or 4 in the morning. So, yay. So how have your 2 weeks been?
Well, I don't really remember 2 weeks ago anymore. Those were happier times, I suppose. Yeah, I've been out for a training. I actually talked to Tony about that earlier, so you all won't have to hear it. So I actually just got back real early on yesterday, about 2 a.m. our time. So I'm not completely rested up yet, but I'm better than I was. It was just, it was really intensive days. It was a work-related training. Essentially went for a week, just of all of this stuff. So I have not gamed at all because I say all day, it was basically 8 to 8 most of the days.
Right.
So there was no time to do much else other than I did take some time to catch up on what was going on with John Wick because I knew we would have to talk about it. Because I wasn't able to do the pinball show because I was out. I was out for that trip, and so I couldn't make the usual episode time. And then that episode time got pushed back anyway because Zach wanted to wait until John Wick got revealed, because otherwise, it's kind of like what we run into here. It's like, oh, there's a new reveal like a day or two after we do the episode. So
you mean you didn't want to be that guy who does the records your half of the podcast while sitting in your seat on the airplane on speakerphone or?
Yeah, no, I didn't bring any of my recording equipment, and I was like, there wasn't going to be a good time that would have been amenable. I mean, it would have been a really awkward time for Zach if I wanted to have recorded, and I wouldn't have wanted to. It was one of those where I'm just like, I don't want to. So I know I won't want to. This is going to be way too exhausting. So I didn't.
One of those where you get back to your hotel room and you just drop in the chair and you're just like, I need to go take a shower. Maybe after a short nap.
It was just a lot of yes. Downtime was downtime. A lot of downtime was sleeping was what it was, because it was time to get back up and then do more work. I do have a correction from our last episode. I said that the Blues Brothers that we were talking about, pinball machine from Home Pin, that the layout was similar to Meteor. That was incorrect. A listener noted it on one of our social media accounts. I was supposed to have said Stars. Stern Electronics is Stars. So I apologize for that error. And I want to thank James G., who has joined our Patreon at the basic level. Remember, you can support us over at patreon.com/eclectic_gamers. And that's all I have to say about that. So let's jump into pinball. There have been several things going on. I'm not going to talk about any of them except John Wick. There's a lot to talk about. So, Tony, I'd like to take this in chunks because I know you have been getting caught up on a lot of the materials that have been happening this week, as well as I.
John Wick has blown up and had so many issues about it that I have been forced to listen to interviews.
Yes.
That's where we're at.
That's what, yeah. That's where we're at right now. And so it's going to get our full pinball. We got video game stuff, and we're going to do that. But this is going to be our only pinball topic today. I'd like to do it in 3 chunks. I'd like to start with just what we normally do, some basics and thoughts about the game as we have seen it in terms of the reveal information. Then Gungate. Let's go ahead and tackle Gungate. And then I want to talk a little bit about marketing and the approach and what's kind of going on with all of this. So in the show notes, folks, I got plenty of links for you. I have 2 written article pieces about John Wick from Nap Arcade and Kineticist that you can go if you want to look at pictures and learn a lot about what's going on in terms of the design of the game. So sort of the usual stuff we would talk about. Then I also have a link to Loser Kid Pinball Podcast's interview that they recently did with George Gomez, which responds to a lot of the early criticism of the John Wick pinball machine. And I also have a link to the Triple Drain Pinball Podcast episode, which spends a lot of time talking about John Wick. And in particular, I really want to call attention to a lot of the marketing discussion that Travis Murray does on that episode, because it's going to be the big thing that sort of informs some of what I want to talk about here. So anyway, all of those are there so you can look, read, and listen to your heart's content. Basics about Stern's John Wick pinball machine. First-time designer, a mechanical engineer who I think has been with Stern for around a decade at this point. Elliot Eisman is the designer. So this is his first designed game. Code is Tim Sexton, I believe, on lead, and then Joshua Henderson did significant help with that package. Art is done by the famed Randy Martinez. We know him for a lot of his Star Wars style art, but obviously this is not Star Wars. And then Ian McShane, who plays the hotelier in the movies. You might also know him from Deadwood, where he got to have all the fun swear words. He did custom callouts. So they did get an actor to do custom callouts. Pricing, pros, $7,000. Premiums, $9,700. Limited editions, $13,000. That is capped at 1,000 units.
God, calling something with 1,000 units limited seems
I know.
weird.
It's, well, we can talk about that in part 3, the marketing side of all of this. I have, for our convenience, in our internal notes, Tony, included some basic images, including the kind of very, very shrunken down feature matrix of the games themselves. But I'd like to just start with asking you, so what do you think about the decision to do John Wick as a pinball machine, just period? Like, what are your just general thoughts? Because it's a newer property. I think the first movie's about 10 years old at this point.
Yeah, it's a newer property, but it's been insanely popular. I feel like I've enjoyed, well, I'm going to be brutally honest. I enjoyed the first 2 John Wicks. The third one was, and I've not even seen the fourth one.
I have not seen the fourth either. And I think I agree with you. I think it's getting a little too superhero-y with the third one.
Yeah.
It's just a little more goofy. I do like that they built a mythos around
I like that they built a mythos around the world. I like that they very much have gotten away from the kind of jump cut, can't actually tell what's going on, rapid cut action stuff that we've seen for the last decade or so in most fight scenes in movies and stuff. That's one of the things I like. But I don't know that the John Wick series really needed more than one movie.
No. And this game does use film clips from all four of the currently existing pieces. And maybe the fourth movie is really, really good. I do need to. I want to watch it. It's just not been free yet on Prime. So I haven't done it. I want to go ahead real quick and highlight the differences between the premium LE versions and the Pro versions. So the muscle car bash toy, the premium LE version, it actually swings open and closed. That's sort of in the center back of the playfield is where that toy resides. Then the premium LE has a motorized Blood Oath token. For those who have seen the second movie, they will remember the Blood Oath token, little round disc thing. And so it actually was created with a scan from the original movie prop for the premium LE. On the Pro, it's represented by a flat piece of plastic, which is pretty common for Pro model stuff. Let's see. All three models do have over in the back right corner the Continental Hotel as a sculpt. That's actually there. On the premium LE, the weapons crate, which is on the far right, kind of right middle, a little bit above the sling, it opens and closes to reveal a hidden shot for collecting weapons. On the Pro model, that is stand-up targets. So that is a distinction as well. And let's see, there is no physical ball lock on the Pro model, but on the premium LE model, there's a center ramp diverter with a physical deconsecrated ball lock, which is one of the acts that happens in the film series. And there is a drop target red circle club accessed, which is protected by a drop target. That's only available with the drop on the premium and LE version. Game is planned to have 6 multi-balls with 2 mini wizard modes and the final wizard mode. So also another thing that was pretty interesting, that this is in the Kineticist article for sure. It's talking about, they mentioned using some AI aspects to how the rules are working, or how the game is going to do some stuff in terms of adjusting shot requirements. It's not clear to me exactly what that means. I'm assuming based off of how well you're doing, something happens. I'm not sure what I don't know what it will, what its intent is. Is it going to try and make it harder and harder, or what? That would be my guess, but I just don't know. So looking at all of this, basic thoughts on the layout. Let's sort of start where we would normally start. I think this is just a 2-flipper game.
I think so. I didn't notice anything else anywhere unless there's one stashed away.
I haven't found one. I think it's just 2. Okay, so that instinctively makes me think, is this going to be a fan layout? And shots are pretty far back, so I think the answer is basically yes.
Yeah.
So people generally really enjoy shooting fan layouts. So, and for a first-time designer, I think that probably makes a lot of sense as being a good place to start. But that also means people looking for something that feels really different. When I look at the layout here, it doesn't look particularly special. Like, I don't see anything that's really, really, yeah, all right, like the moving bash toy on the premium LE. Okay, yeah, it's a cool idea of a swinging. But we saw that with Venom with the little doppelganger thing. It swung out,
right,
and it was even cooler because it wasn't a bash toy. It had them little dangly dangle targets. So let's not go there. I don't want to do beeps. Okay, so layout. It looks like it shoots fine.
Yeah,
fine to me.
I mean,
maybe well. I just, but I'm not. I don't. When I look at it, I'm not excited to shoot it. I mean, I like to play anything new. So
right. No, I mean, like anything, I look forward to trying it. That doesn't necessarily mean anything else.
I think the rules should have potential. I tend to like Tim's rules. I think what he did with Black Knight Sword of Rage is the highlight of Black Knight Sword of Rage with the rule set, and I really associate that a lot with him. What do you think of the art? And we're going to get into the aspect that there's no guns in the art in our second portion, right. But just like in general, how Randy Martinez tackled this.
I don't actually like any of the art at all, and it has nothing to do with a lack of guns. It feels very much like a hand-drawn version of the old Photoshop cutout art. I get that vibe. I'm more thinking about like some of the back, like the what is it, the premium back glass, and in chunks on the field, it kind of feels very that style. But overall, I just don't. It doesn't wow me in any way, shape, or form. I think it's an interesting idea with the cabinet side art, the way they did just on the Pro and the LE. It's just like a single big static image, no writing, no anything else. Mm-hmm. And the way they did that, I really do actually kind of like how they did the side of the head on the LE. That's an interesting choice that I don't hate. But overall, it doesn't really do anything for me.
Okay. I would say, generally speaking, the cab art, like sides of the back box, sides of the cabinet, I'm okay with those. I think those look decent. I don't care for the translights. I'd say the worst one, in my personal opinion, is the premium, which is going with like this comic book sort of cutscene thing, and it's like that. It's not a comic book though. It's not a comic book movie. He's something like a superhero, but I personally think the Pro probably has the best of the three translights, but I don't love it. But the premium is easily my least favorite. And like you, I'm very unenamored by the playfield art choices. You've got the wheel at the center with Keanu in the middle, a bunch of character heads sort of surrounding him. So I definitely see where you're getting that Photoshop era vibe thing, but hand drawn, and it's well hand drawn.
Yeah, it's executed well.
But then you end up with a more photorealistic hand drawing of the cast of characters just below that circle, which I that's actually the part I like the best, and I don't like it very much. I don't like the comic-y panel cut out above the circle before all the shots. It just seems really jarring. It's like this horizontal, well, not quite, it's more diagonal, but this diagonal slash of art that just looks different, and then all of a sudden you get to exactly what you were pointing out. Hey, look, here's a ramp with someone's face on it. Here's a ramp with someone's face on it. Oh, look, here's a third ramp with someone's face on it. It's like, thank you, era of 24. We're back. We're back, baby. We're back. I like those sort of cityscape stuff in the back and stuff, but the actual art and all these character placements, it does not work for me. I never buy games based off of art, but this definitely would not be one I would get because of the art. Like, I wouldn't hang any of this on my wall.
No,
this is a lit translator, a play field. I wouldn't want any of these. Well done, but I just don't like the style they went with. Well, those are all the main things. I've not watched gameplay. I don't know if gameplay is out yet. I think probably a little bit by now, but
I thought they aired it.
I haven't watched it,
but I've not seen it.
So okay, well then we can skip that. Anything else you want to say about what we see here? It looks competent, would be the way I would put it, but
I feel bad for Elliot because it's his first time putting out a design. And there's so many issues that have about this that have probably nothing to do with the actual.
I mean, most of this, what we've covered so far, wouldn't, like, if the game plays well, if the shots do feel really good and the rules are good, like, I would be cool with owning it.
Yeah.
So that none of this. So I don't feel too bad for him. I'm not going to feel too bad for him.
Well, if the other issues that we're about to talk about hurt its sales enough to make it very poor. For something that's not necessarily his fault.
That's true. But I think where people are complaining, it'll be obvious what the issue is.
Right.
And if it's not Elliot, then it's not Elliot. I think Stern will understand that. But speaking of understanding, let's go ahead and get into Gungate. Okay. And so this is where the link to the Loser Kid interview with George Gomez, you watched that on YouTube, right?
I did.
All right. And I listened to the actual audio version of the podcast while I was mowing yesterday. So we both have that as our main source on this. So as background, game gets revealed. People notice that in the art, and by the art, we mean the playfield art, the cabinet art, the translite art, and the backbox art. None of it features any character holding a gun. They are holding weapons. There are swords, there are nunchucks, there are things like of that nature, but there are no firearms. And think, because we cover every major pinball release. So listeners, I want you to think back. Wayne's World style. I want you to think back. Think why shark no eat ball from Jaws, but on the biggest, most illicit steroids possible.
Very much.
Why no guns in Gun Fu game? So, and people lost their minds. Not everyone.
No, but it was. I will go to the phrase of disturbing.
Some of it was. Some of the rants that I saw and read about were. What do the kids today say? Cringe? Is cringe the word? Maybe that was the word they said 10 years ago. I don't know.
I don't know.
So here's the thing. And let me just tell you, for those of you who don't podcast, which is probably most of you, or do YouTube or anything else, let me tell you 2 things you do not talk about in your hobby. You don't talk politics and you don't talk religion, because all you're going to do is hurt people's feelings and alienate them. We've tried to be very cautious. We have never touched religion with a 10-foot pole on this show. We flirted a little bit with politics on occasion.
Little hey baby, how you doing?
Of that, yeah, but we both work in government, so it's kind of hard for us to never mention anything. And
right.
Obviously, there's a difference between politics and government, but these sort of things rear their head. And so, let me open with that. I totally, just like with Jaws, even though I thought personally the notion that a Jaws pinball machine had to have a shark on it that had to eat the ball was the most ridiculous set of demands that one would just fabricate in their own brain. I am sympathetic to someone who wants a John Wick pinball machine, which is a movie that features a lot of guns that maybe it'd be one gun, maybe one gun, maybe half a gun, maybe just a clip. So I want to say that if you don't want to buy the game because there are no guns in the art, I totally understand that.
100%.
Totally understand that. I would have just instinctively thought it's John Wick, right? It's gonna have a gun on it. Just like if there was a official Matrix game, I'm going to assume there has to be a black trench coat in the art, right? Or, I mean, I would just assume it would be there. Maybe. I mean, and if it didn't, I'd be like, oh, well, that didn't go as I assumed. But all right, so let me take this. And let's give a little, because not everyone here is going to have consumed. In fact, I'm not going to suggest you go and search out the stuff that happened with it.
Quite the opposite. I'm going to say you probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
You'll feel better, and you won't be.
Don't ruin your hobby with conspiracy.
Yes, and you won't be nearly as disappointed in your fellow hobbyists.
Yeah, disappointed is a good word to say. So. It has been all over the place. I have seen from that. This is Stern Pinball going woke and deciding that they hate guns, which, I mean, in and of itself seemed like a very strange claim to me, given that it wasn't that long ago that James Bond came out and there are guns in the art in James Bond. So I'm like,
yeah.
Oh, so this is like a new wokeness, right? It's not
guns bad, nuclear weapons good.
Yeah. Yes. You can't hug your kids with nuclear arms. Think on that part. All right. Okay. So there's the woke Stern, that this is a move against the Second Amendment. Gotta go full America. And that they've taken this stance. I get that kind of ties with the wokeness, I suppose.
It does.
Though my favorite, that either Disney is a corporate overlord and Stern is the puppet, and Disney's hate of guns means Stern, even if they like guns, couldn't put the guns in. Or if you want to be a little more grounded, but also super cynical, that Stern does so many licenses with Disney that Disney now has some sort of carte blanche authority to veto art packages on properties. This is a Lionsgate property. It's not a Disney property. So, but there's been that.
That's pretty insane.
Yeah, and everything in between to connect all of this. Now, the thing that was so surprising, galling, however you want to phrase it, was that, again, while I fully understand if you are a huge John Wick fan and it broke your little heart to not see guns all over the playfield, to jump to all of this just like insane conspiracy rabbit hole nonsense instead of just thinking about anything practical that would have come into play, a practicality that has come into play on all of these games. And we've complained about this practicality on all of these games. This is, honestly, is it really that much different than when Jaws came out and Scheider's character wasn't on the playfield art because they didn't have the license to him? They couldn't do. He's in the clips, but he couldn't be in the art.
Yeah, licensing is weird.
It's like he's like the movie. He's in most of it. This stuff happened, but people just reacted in this way that it was this big conspiracy against them and their interest in firearms, and it was pretty sad, in my opinion, and it looked really, really bad. I normally wouldn't encourage people to take down stuff that they post, content creation wise. But if I had had a reaction like this, first off, I can't imagine I'd ever would. But if I had had a reaction like this, I would have been so embarrassed I would have deleted it after the truth came out.
We spoke last episode or the episode before about a rant that I had recorded on multiple times and I deleted and never posted on the grams.
And people came and said, "Please, Tony, post it. Bring it back."
I had completely deleted it because I felt like that rant was too raw and emotional and was too not controlled to be posted.
Too much rage.
And it was like 30% of some of the stuff I've seen out there about this thing.
Yeah,
I can't even imagine having posted some of this stuff that I've seen people type and put out into the universe to share with people. But that's just me. I just can't even imagine having done that. It's insane to me. But the fact that they did, it's their right to do that. It's their right to have their opinions. It's their right to have their thoughts. But the fact that all of this was based off of teaser pictures of a game with absolutely no other knowledge is just sad.
It's not intelligent.
Very much
it's
so.
Not. It's that's why if it had been me and I had somehow done this, I would have been like, I can't salvage this. I can't spin this. I was so grossly wrong. I need to just take down this wrongness and not let it spread any further for my own reputation.
Right. Well, and to come up with so vehemently, they're woke and they're trying to take away our guns and they're trying to do this and that. You get the picture of the guy with the strings on the board and all the pictures.
Yes,
the
all string board.
And you're putting everything together and this is how. And that's what this is and that's pulling this in and it's all part of the grand conspiracy and the. You need to take a deep breath.
Yes, it's very dangerous to create content when you have rage.
Right. There's guns in the video clips.
Yep. But the reaction was so quick, no one paused to find out.
No one paused to find out. It's and the thing is everything was coming down, this is Stern's evil and Disney and listen to the interviews with Gomez.
So what's some of what you learned from that when you went through it? And again, we have the link to the podcast version with Loser Kid, so you can hear what George has to say. And this isn't the only one he's done. He's done some other shows.
He's done some others.
But I would recommend. I would start with the Loser Kid one because that's what I started with. But go So what's going on here, Tony? What actually happened?
From the interview, the licensor has to sign off, and because there's no rating system. And because they're put out in public, the licensor wouldn't sign off with guns because of whatever reason the licensors have.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, that makes total sense.
It does.
If the licensor says no, you have no choice in the matter. He had a very good discussion about a rating system game for a game he'd done. A video game.
Back when he was with Midway.
Back when he was with Midway, talking about ratings and how that affects and has to be signed off and served. And Pinball doesn't have a rating system. Pinball, I don't think Pinball needs a rating system.
No, I wouldn't.
I mean, there's a lot of people in Pinball, but it's not that big. It's way too niche to have an actual rating system.
And the thing, I guess, that kind of leaves me a bit gobsmacked regarding the reaction, the visceral, rage-filled reaction, is we have seen this licensor interfering with how art can be done for so long now. Why would anyone jump to any other weird theory
right
and off the bat without even defaultly? Again, if you had any sophistication in this hobby, and I don't mean that in like an intricate way, like if you've been in this hobby for like more than a year and followed the new stuff, you know this stuff happens all the time with licensors. Don't go into the whole, well, Disney's interfering with Lionsgate because of the politics of the Second Amendment. It's like, no. So as you noted, George, like the too long didn't read, you already put it really succinctly, was that because these games can be routed, they basically demanded that the art package be an E for everyone rating in the video game world, because any child in theory could go up and see it. But once the start button is pressed, they don't care. The Lionsgate is like, whatever. We know what John Wick is. It's time for the gun kata.
Because you've pressed the start button. You have chosen to play the game. You have made that choice, as opposed to you walked into a room and it was in your face.
Right. And in theory, a parent is supposed to be monitoring their child. And so if the child put $1 into the game, the parent was okay with it. That's the idea. So, and I believe even, as I recall, Gomez noted that in the goodie bag with the games, the weapons crate, which doesn't have guns in it on the default install, there's a crate with guns, because homeowners might want to install, or locations that are like, I'm okay with it being this way, or I'm a bar and I don't let kids in, or whatever. You know, you get to make your own decisions, like Merkins get to do. You get to make your own decisions. I still remain absolutely flabbergasted that, again, I totally understand people being pissed and reacting quite loudly about there not being guns in the art. I totally get that they went to conspiracy levels to justify their reasoning for why it happened in the face of what we have seen so many times. I don't understand how any of you, if you fell for this, I'm so disappointed in you. I'm so disappointed.
I will go a step farther. I have lost respect for several people in this hobby. I have lost respect that I had for them just because of how this happened. And they've had to spend so much for stuff. I mean, they've had to come out swinging that, hey, this is what happened. We didn't make the choice. We didn't make it. And in that interview, Gomez even says there are games where they've walked away from because they felt like they couldn't do it justice because of what was laid down to them as the rules.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
So obviously this was okay, the art, but I mean, I'm sure if they said, you can't have guns in the video clips, that they would have walked away.
Yeah, because it's like, well, what's left? Is John Wick walking around thinking about his dog?
Right, right. So I mean, it's just, it is disturbing. When I first saw everything blowing up, I was just in shock. I'm like, really? Because I'll be honest, I didn't even notice that there weren't guns in the art at first, because my first thought when I saw the art was, wow, that's real crappy.
I didn't notice because I'd actually found out about the visceral reaction before I even saw the game, because I was so busy. I didn't consume the game media right when it came out. Yeah, it's just, so I guess before we move on to our third and last section of our John Wick discussion, I just want to say, look, folks, as Tony said, take a breath. Like everyone should take a breath, even if you didn't react this way. And just maybe the simplest answer is because at this point, with what Gomez has said about all of this, which makes perfect sense, makes total logical business.
I mean, how long did they have stuff delayed because they couldn't get the art signed off on for Star Wars?
Oh yeah, the R2D2 topper.
The R2D2 topper forever. What about the? I mean, they had that whole special release of James Bond was blown because the licensor wouldn't sign off,
and lots of people, myself included, were really, pretty down on James Bond's art package because it's just posters everywhere, and it's like that's the only thing they'd let him have.
Right.
It's
so
like,
I mean, this is far from the first time the licensor has.
It made total sense. So to conspiracy theory, to bring that sort of mentality into this hobby is deeply destructive. I think that's because I mean, without again not wanting to get political, Tony and I own guns. We've gone hunting. Like we're not.
I'm sure I have told this story before. Dennis was there, but I remember picking you up from Syracuse, New York, when you graduated.
Oh gosh, oh yes, I remember. This.
And we were on the drive home. We're like, let's go to Niagara Falls, and then we went to Niagara Falls. We're like, well, let's go to the Canadian side because this was back in the day before you had to have a passport to go into Canada. So
this
we're like,
pre 9/11.
So pre 9/11, we're like, let's go to Canada, and we pull up there, and the guy at the border walks up to us. And in my mind, he was like a trainee. It was like his second day on the job.
Maybe.
That's what it is in my mind. He walks up and he's like, "Oh, hello there. Oh, where's you going? Oh, we just want to go see the falls from the Canadian side. Oh, that's real nice. Do you own any guns? Oh, yeah, I own a lot of guns. I've got tons and tons of guns." And the guy's eyes went huge.
Now, he didn't ask if we had them on us. He asked if we owned any.
Right. So I answered truthfully.
You did?
I own lots of guns. And the guy's like, he realized, he was like, I realized that he's like freaking out. I'm like, I don't have any with me. I just own them.
Mm-hmm.
But because I remember afterwards, because we were at that stop for so long while all of this was figured out.
I was getting help moved back, so we were a group in multiple vehicles.
Yes.
So, but we were delayed because
we
Tony
were,
and I were in the same car.
We were delayed enough that the people in the car, the other car ahead of us, were like, "Oh, nope, they're being pulled out. Oh, they just smashed Tony's head off the car."
My dad said that to which might not have been the nicest thing to have done at that time in retrospect, but anyway, yes. So, anyway, so again, just to give context, because I want people will wonder about bias and such. So, like Tony and I have firearms, so anyway. It's not and we didn't, and I think most people, when you'd see all this, you wouldn't have jumped to this as your theory. It doesn't align with anything else that we've seen out of Stern. It's such a, but Seth Davis is there now and he's from Disney. So maybe that's the angle on how the mouse is in the house. I hadn't heard that, but now I'm wondering, because I mean, he used to work that way. Anyway, it was goofy.
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 Disney's in the house.
Maybe I said it because Disney owns us. Maybe when I said thank you on the basic support at the start of the episode for our Patreon for James G, what if G is for Goofy and that James is Disney, and that's how we get our money.
Disney better not be doing basic support. I'm just saying.
Look, Disney's. After their trouble in Florida, Disney's being a little more cautious with their money. They're giving us $1 at a time. I mean,
they're going to have to work a little harder to buy me off. I mean, I'm dealing with a lot of car repairs right now.
Well,
there's a lot of stuff going on.
They're going to work on it. All right. Third piece I wanted to briefly cover, and this really ties more to the Triple Drain Pinball podcast episode. Now, I don't think you've had an opportunity to listen to that.
I didn't have an opportunity.
Now, we have not recently. However, you and I, though, have had multiple online marketing discussions with Travis.
Yes, we have.
So you kind of know his approach on how
he's got a very good approach.
Yes, and he has an extended. It's towards the latter portion of it's basically the latter half of the episode that I have linked in the video description for folks if you want to find it. About kind of like what's going on now. Now, with the marketing campaign, I want to touch on a couple things. So one will be John Wick specific, and one will be more Stern broad, and then we'll move on to video games. The John Wick one was the strategy that they did when the reveal came out. Basically, non-pinball media, but media individuals and non-distributors as well, got embargoed access to the game. So they had the art assets, they had all the stuff ready to go with their videos. The videos were pre-made, like we've seen in so many, like I see in wristwatches all the time. We see it in video games all the time. All the same of that. And What do you think, Tony, though, of the decision to do that with basically non-pinball people, but they didn't do it with any of the pinball people? Like Kineticist didn't have early access, Nap Arcade didn't have early access, and the distributors like the Pinball Company, Flippin' Out Pinball, Tilt Amusements, they didn't know anything until the webinar with Stern, like they normally. They didn't get the assets early to put up to start building the web pages until after the game was announced or revealed, really. So what do you think of that decision? I guess the decision to do that with outsiders, but not do that with either the media in the hobby and or the people who actually sell the games for them.
I can see. I've got a couple thoughts. My first thought is everybody talks about trying to get pinball out to people who are not in the hobby. And this sort of outreach and priming of the pump to kind of give them the chance to get everything put together and put out there on outside of the hobby is something that I think needs to be done if you want to try and get that reach to go farther. Because these internal hobby stuff, people are going to watch or like one way or another. And then if we want to go ahead and pull out tinfoil and go conspiracy.
Another conspiracy, I don't know if we can handle it.
I think the pinball media within the hobby leaks like a sieve. So anything that went to them, other than maybe a few that have proven themselves, is going to find its way out early anyway, because it happens pretty often. Half the stuff we talk about is stuff that comes out from leaks. Mm-hmm. But I don't actually have a problem with it. I think that outreach outside of the hobby is a problem that pinball has had for a while. I know I've said on multiple occasions that several specific companies, it would probably help them to reach out to non-hobby people that are in a similar vein, just to get that outreach out there, and to try and get more people into it. Because even after all this time, you still hear pinball's still a thing. And let's face it, the pinball resurgence has calmed. We are beyond the peak. We are falling into a trough again. And
that's the second side of this I wanted to discuss. In terms of my thoughts on the media thing, I honestly didn't think too much on it. I think the leak control is why the distributors aren't getting early enough access from their perspective. But I do agree that it really causes issues for them to be able to properly build up their stuff in order to be able to sell it. Travis is able to dive in more because he I think looked into some of the non-pinball media that got the early access, and whether or not they were the best picks is a strategy that you can go and listen to what his opinion is on that, because I don't know enough about them to be able to weigh in on it. I do think that with just doing maybe a couple pinball media things, NDAs in place, signed, would make sense, and then especially if it's just a handful, you'd probably be able to sort out if anyone broke that and if they did, obviously they're #dead to me sort of thing, and they could do that. I don't think there should be on the media side. It does seem like they would be able to do that. I don't feel strongly on it, but in part because we would never be an entity that they would work with. So because we don't sign NDAs for the podcast here, so we would never be the ideal format. But I could see them like being able to arrange something with like a Nap Arcade, who I imagine would be able to, or Kineticist would. I think there are plenty out there that would be willing to sign that sort of stuff to be able to build their resource in ahead of time so that it could drop right away when the embargoes are lifted, and just but I get where Stern comes from with probably what you kind of pointed out, which is broadening pinball to the bigger market, and pinball media is not going to do that. We're preaching to the choir here,
right?
So now going into what you brought up about the situation, the trough, as you phrased it, yes, and that's been something else that's coming up. I mean, we looked at this. You mocked their 1,000 unit count on the LEs. This is a lot of money. My very, very preliminary information I have is that John Wick is not selling great out of the gate. perhaps because of the conspiracy theory stuff, perhaps because it's a new designer, perhaps because the art isn't impressing people, and or perhaps because the layout looks relatively pedestrian. Regardless, and this is also discussed on Triple Drain, is this whole thing. And it came up with Loser Kid in the interview as well, the issue about the pricing. And I liked how they pressed George Gomez a bit about, like, on the topper thing, because he really emphasized how inflation, we all know about inflation, it's hit all of us.
Yes.
And how much inflation has impacted things like the steel they bring in and all of that. Didn't really feel he gave a good answer about, okay, yeah, well, why is like the $450 Black Knight topper now $1,500 though? There's inflation and then there's gouging,
right?
Which is how I view what they're doing with toppers. But it's obviously a problem because regardless of what's happened with inflation, and George did acknowledge this, that their prices are much higher than they would like them to, because they know it. I mean, they know it's hurting their sales. Our wages didn't go up the same rate as this pinball inflation has. So
I wish.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's becoming and lots of us, including me, have talked about, like, after doing TPF, Elton John, Jersey Jack Pinball, really fun game. I really enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy it for $12,000. You kidding me? It's not $12,000 fun. And now that we're in the trough that you noted, like, pinball is, you buy it, you play it, you sell it, you get less than what you bought it for, which is proper market dynamics.
Right.
But when you're coming out of a world where when I got my Godzilla Premium, I knew I could sell it anytime I wanted and make $2,000 at least on that game. At least. It's like, that day is gone, as it should be. But now people are going to be a lot more cautious. You don't want to buy a dog. What do you end up with? A barbecue challenge. You're going to lose thousands of dollars on a game like that. Thousands.
Yeah.
Before the pandemic, a Stern Pro on average, I'd say in home use only, would maybe lose $500 off of new in box. But that was when new in box was $5,000, not $7,000. So it's just, so Travis really dives in a lot about some of that. But what do you think in terms of, given what we're seeing now, the demand is falling, even if more people than ever are interested in pinball? When they see the stickers on these things of the price tags, they are going to shock Pikachu all over the floor. And that's where I kind of look at and Travis discusses this, when they did the non-pinball media embargo early access stuff, how many of those views, everyone gets so excited about the views, but how many of that is people are really going to turn into buyers when they find out how much money this is? It's not like a video game.
It's going to be very small number. It's going to be, we can see this, look at some of the comments and reactions from other things that have gotten big outside of the hobby talk. Labyrinth Pinball, Weird Al. They all got large outside the hobby talk, and some of the first comments you ever saw from people was, "That looks amazing. Oh my God, how can anybody afford that?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, do you think, is there anything that could be done short of they have to figure out a way to get the pricing down?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. There might be something, but I think even if they get the pricing down with the situation that most people are in and the situation that the economy's in right now, I think it's just going to be hurt no matter what. I think there's going to be a core of people who have plenty of disposable income and they buy everything. I think it will remain strong enough to sell for most of the companies to keep sales up and to not necessarily break everything. But I think we're going to continue to see sales slump for a while, barring a major change. I just don't see how the sales rates can continue like they were.
Yeah, I do not see a path short of, you have to crack the code on getting the pricing down. And like hearing to Gomez talk with the Loser Kids, I'm thinking things like Do they need to do more vertical integration? Do they need to have more control over their stainless steel supply? If that's the problem, if steel's so expensive, then maybe they need to get into the business of making, do we go that far and say, you need to start making your own steel? Like, they're too small to achieve that.
Yeah, it's too small to make that work.
The idea of having more control over their own supply chain if the supply chain is what's giving them the strain, because I don't know what else. I mean, George Gomez on the interview did note that it's more than just the bill of materials, but things like, let's say we say, all right, your code needs to be simpler. One programmer per game, period. You don't, no more teams, and you're just going to make them simpler games moving forward. They don't get to have 10,000 wizard modes, Jersey Jack. Sorry.
But then people are going to complain that they're too simple. They're not going to want to buy them.
Is it really going to make a big difference in the price, though? Because that individual salary is amortized over hundreds of games. It's really going to change. I'm not sure. Honestly, I think it has to be a focus on bill of materials. I don't think it's, unless the licenses have just got stupid expensive. What else is there?
Which is a valid thought. If the licensing has gotten really expensive, but I mean, even with, when you take into account, cost of office space and factory space and workers and benefits and everything else, there's a line in there, but short of having an actual accountant down into the weeds, we could never know what those lines actually are.
Yeah, no, to me, it's got to be a price thing, because they won't do the other angle. Here's where I think they're in a weird wedge. Pinball in general it's a hobby. It's a blue collar hobby, really, in my mind, in the sense that it's historically it relied on people who had to work with their hands to keep the games running. And that's still true.
Yeah.
They hold up better now, but there's just, and a lot of people just remember playing in an arcade because you just go with a handful of quarters and you could have some entertainment. It was a low cost hobby to engage with. And then when pinball was dying in the early 2000s, getting used games was relatively affordable. And, the older you went back, usually the cheaper the games could be. And, you could fix them up and sell them for more. And there was a way you could kind of channel yourself up into the newer stuff. I did that.
Yeah.
A lot of people did. And it's harder to do that nowadays. And there are also a lot of people that don't want to work on their games like that and do that path. And I think that's absolutely fine. I'm not judging any of that. But a lot of people who did it that way can't do $7,000 pros, or they won't do $7,000 pros, much less all the way up to $15,000 collector editions from Jersey Jack. And that's kind of the range we're in now. So Stern's got this problem because they had people where this was kind of like a quote unquote middle class obtainable entertainment product, but they won't go high end enough to make it a true luxury product. Like, again, I'm going to do like when we think about wristwatches, and there's a whole range of like these like really practical, fun to own, interesting mechanical movement tool watches. And then there's like the hand finished movement decorated luxury, that you get it. I don't want to belabor it with people. I'm just saying they're like in wristwatches, there's like functional tool watches that we don't need anymore because we have computers, but we want them because we want watches. And then there's luxury watches, which are really expensive because you're paying for the prestige and the hand finishing and all of that. Pinball refuses to cross that line because, in my opinion, because the standard they would be held to, they cannot meet, and they know it. Look at all the blowback they've gotten as now, like John Q. Public has started buying pinball machines. You remember like 5 years ago, why are they dimpling? I don't like dimples. It's ugly. It shouldn't have to dimple at all. Like there were massive foreign debates on this sort of stuff. That was never seen as a big deal historically. And people say, well, there weren't dimples historically. It just depends how far back you go. But my point is, like, these people, y'all listening right now, you guys get excited over powder coat. But I'm telling you, you could have like people going in and using diamond polish, black polishing every screw in a pinball machine. They do it in watches.
Yeah.
You pay enough money, they do it in watches. They could do it in pinball. And then there's like, here is your $25,000 pinball machine. But they won't go for that because they can't meet that quality standard.
You mean just 3D printing parts and putting them into the machine isn't the quality that people are looking for when they want hand-finished, high-end luxury stuff.
I'm telling you, pinball people don't know what that is. Like if you wanted to target, I'm just saying, another option if you can't get the prices down is to go the luxury route. But no one, Jersey Jack is the one that's closest to trying to do it, and they haven't done it. All they do is stick more toys in and claim they're the Cadillac of pinball. It's like, but the game doesn't run any better than a Stern. In fact, it runs worse. So,
right. And here's the thing is, I don't think the route you're talking about requires there to be the Cadillac of pinball. You're getting to the point where you're looking for the Mercedes AMG of pinball.
Mm.
We're
not talking Lamborghini.
You're looking for something more than just a Cadillac.
There needs to be. Here's pinball. Here's how pinball justifies higher pricing. 3 things. 1, limited edition, and we see this in plenty of other luxury goods. So that one makes total sense. 2, more LEDs. It's like, we'll just stick more LEDs in the fancier versions.
Never mind that LEDs are cheap.
LEDs, and along with that, like art blades inside and all that. They're stickers. So stickers and lights, and which is stuff you can order off of from Amazon, pennies on the dollar. And then third, designer's signature on the card. Wow. So like it's I'm sorry, guys. I get you want collect LEs, by all means do it, but I'm just telling you, it's super low effort. Like this is super low effort. It's like, where are the ramps made out of gold? Like, that's still low effort, but at least it's like, stick some real money in there. I'm not saying this is the right answer.
I don't think ramps made out of gold would work.
I'm not saying
well.
It's smart.
Obviously, it would have to be platinum.
It would. We'll plate it. Well, Rhodium plate all of it. And it won't be 18 karat. We'll do 10. We'll do 10 karat. It'll be fine. I'm just saying, like, that's the other option. I think it's the bad option, but I'm just saying, like, they're in this middle ground. They don't want to go to the effort to be true luxury, but they can't get the prices down enough to be fair to get the market that they need to get to in the middle class. And that's going to continue to be a problem. And blaming inflation isn't going to fix the problem for them.
Right. Because you're at a point where people are freaking out because of discussions of moving the price of a video game to $70.
Right.
Where people are freaking out because a new console might release at $600. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing is that audience is amazingly huge compared to the pinball audience.
It is. And it's arguably always been more egalitarian on that side. But also, I need to point out, like, I remember a time where I could buy a working EM for $600 or less, price of a console. So there are people who remember the hobby being like that, and they're priced out now. So, and they were always going to be priced out. Some of them would have always been priced out in new in-box pricing, but it's just, it's a lot. And obviously the companies have to make money. And so we know a portion of it is profit. So, and it's hard to really trust because they're not publicly traded. It's hard to trust exactly how much of this is profit and how much of this is truly inflation in action.
Right. And I also, this is going to be a kind of out there tangent thing. I wonder how much of this has also been driven by that we've seen so much since the pandemic, the move away from stuff to experiences. Because I know plenty of people that if they had $10,000 and their choice was to take a trip with their friends or family or to buy a pinball machine, they're going to take the trip because they're going to want the experiences over the tangible physical item. So I think that could be a part of it as well, is just seeing a shift in how people are. And let's face it, a pinball machine takes up a lot of space, and a lot of people don't have the space for more than a machine, maybe two, if that. So,
yeah, actually, I think the trough that you described at the start of this third portion of our pinball section is probably driven more by that by those things than the price itself. The price itself is an issue for the long-term people that were buying, and now they can't buy as much because the resale value is going down and the price has gone up, and so the risk is higher and higher and higher. But yeah, I think like that whole huge surge that we saw in 2021, 2022, that's people stuck at home.
Yeah.
And now their homes are full of games, like however many they were going to get, 1, 2, 3, they're full. And they don't want to go around selling them. Like they loved what they bought, or they don't know how to sell them and they don't want to deal with it, or they're happy with things as they are and they want to go on trips again. That's what they did before the pandemic. And now they're going to do trips again. They're not going to, it doesn't matter if the game was 7,000 or 5,000. They're not going to buy it anymore. They're done with pinball and that. Like they'll always be fans, but like they're done with acquisition.
Right.
So yeah, I think I actually think that's truly the majority of why the sales are down now. Like Foo Fighters was the last big hurrah. I don't know how well Jaws sold, but it would not shock me to find out that Jaws ends up being sold less than Godzilla and Jurassic Park.
Oh, I believe
and
that.
And maybe even Avengers. But I don't know. So anyway, that's all these are just thoughts for the listeners to think about. Feel free to share yours with us, emailing us at clicktogamerspodcast@gmail.com. But I want to go ahead and let's move us into the video game section because we've been like an hour in on this pinball thing. Yeah. I do want to open with an email that we got from Sean L. Thank you for emailing, Sean. He actually has a bit of a pinball thing and a bit of a video game thing, but I think the video game thing is the one that's more relevant for our discussion, so I put it in this section. So here's what Sean wrote. 1. I have to say, I was a bit shocked that you didn't have a category for board games. Incidentally, he's referring back to when we were talking about our let's name 3 movies to do as pinball themes. Video. Yeah, we didn't do board games. Didn't have a category for board games, as I understand part of your podcast used to include a board game section before I started listening, so I could be wrong. You're not wrong. I would think there would be many, but Risk and Settlers of Catan could work very well. 2. I've never asked a question regarding video games before, but here goes. I grew up with the Atari 2600, and the joysticks were set up with the fire action button on the left side, but most modern consoles have the majority of the main buttons on the right side. Even 40 years later, I prefer the button on the left. Any idea why it changed? Sean. Thank you for emailing, Sean. We do appreciate it. No, I just didn't think of the category for board games when I did the pinball, so I just didn't put it in our bullet. I made a bullet list in our eternal notes, and Tony was just responding to the bullets that I made as I was. So I've had like 6 things in there, and I thought that was enough, and I quit thinking.
Yeah,
so that's the only reason there. Joystick. Do you have any knowledge on why that would be?
I have knowledge? No, I have a guess.
Okay. I tried to research this. I actually spent time on this when I was at my work trip. So but I want to hear your guess because I don't have an answer either. Mine's basically a guess as well.
My guess is it has to do with the majority of the population is right-handed. The majority of the population's right hand are more dexterous, and thus with the buttons, they'll be moving them more than a control pad where it's just your thumb setting on one spot and just shifting your thumb around.
Yep, that was the online general consensus I could find from the research. That was my guess as well. So yeah, it's more about the handedness of the player. And now that there are multiple buttons, it matters.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, again, thanks, Sean. We do appreciate it. Tony, we've got the bleak blackness of the dark side of pinball is done, and now we have the bleak blackness of the dark side of video games. So let's see. Who hasn't pissed off? Sony's pissed people off. Microsoft's pissed people off. Steam has pissed people off. And Twitch is pissed off. So yeah. I don't know what order you want to go in.
Welcome to the Eclectic Emo Podcast.
This might be the Eclectic Ragers Podcast. Erp.
Welcome to the Eclectic Ragers Podcast. Okay, but
what Disney do to Twitch, man? Tell us what the mouse do to their house.
It wasn't the mouse, but Twitch's number one subscriber thing for years now has been Critical Role.
Mm-hmm.
That's been their biggest by far. Several years ago when the leak of Twitch internals happened, Critical Role was their number one moneymaker by a lot.
Yep.
Like double or triple the number 2. Well, Critical Role has decided that they're tired of dealing with middlemen when it comes to being paid for their stuff. So they have created their own channel, their own website, their own streaming service. So they're doing their own streaming service.
They're going to make a lot more money doing that.
They are, because, I mean, Twitch takes more than half. So the big thing is that it is slightly more expensive than a Twitch subscription. It's $1 more. But you get all the same stuff you would on Twitch, plus all sorts of extras. There's new shows. There's a Discord. There's discounts in their stores. There's early access to tickets for live events. And the big thing here is that their main shows are going to remain to be free on Twitch and YouTube, like they have been for their entire run. But now you can directly support Critical Role. So all of those Twitch subs, those $4.99 Twitch subs, can now go to a $5.99 sub directly to Critical Role, which means they get 100% of that money instead of just the smaller amount of that money. And they're bringing a bunch of new shows out, including what I think is just a great idea, because you've played role-playing games. We've played role-playing games before. Yeah. And when you end the session, everybody just gets up and goes home and doesn't talk, and you don't just sit there and emote for a while about everything that's happened. Yeah.
They just leave.
Exactly. So they literally have a new show that is just, okay, the session is ended, but we're just going to keep the cameras rolling, and then all of their discussions and emoting is a new show. Their other big things is they've been getting demonetized a lot because of language and because, the show has violence and stuff in it. So that's reduced what they've made on like YouTube and such. So that's another reason they've gone that route. I think I've not heard any formal announcements from like Twitch or anything about this, but I don't see any way, shape, or form this does not harm Twitch in a large way. It's just too big of a subscriber base to see shift. The question, I think, is going to be how many people are subscribed with a Prime subscription as opposed to people who actually pay for it.
And maybe that's why they're doing the extra $1, because they're factoring in that they're probably going to lose a lot of the Prime subs.
Could be. So
hard to say. Well, I mean, I guess they'll find out pretty soon.
Yeah. I don't think they have to worry.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, at all. So Steam pissed off a country.
A whole country?
An entire country.
Wow.
Somehow. I mean, there's no official word, but every single ISP in the country of Vietnam has now blocked Steam in all of its form from being accessed within Vietnam.
Okay.
There has been some discussion that the local game developers have been complaining to the government that they can't compete with Steam, all the games on Steam, because their games are developed and have to be given and approved by the government, while Steam could bring in anything from anywhere else in the world without governmental approval. So, and now Steam is gone in Vietnam.
Bye-bye, Steam.
So, I'm sure that does pretty much nothing to Steam's bottom line because it's Vietnam.
Yeah, I don't imagine it's a huge share of their portfolio, but
it is an interesting. The fact that there's been no announcements and it just kind of happened is what is interesting. A lot of the reporting coming out of Vietnam is from people who are like using VPNs to get around the blocks. Right. So, Sony, as we've talked about, and plenty of other people have talked about, did the wonderful, let's make an announcement on Friday afternoon, and then we're going to go home for the weekend.
Weekends.
When they made the announcement that beginning at the end of May, everybody on PC was going to have a PSN account to have access to Helldivers 2.
The hit game Helldivers 2 that everyone loves?
Yes, the massively hit game Helldivers 2 that is so huge on PC in addition to being huge on PlayStation.
And that those PC players love having to have their PSN account.
Oh, yeah, they love every bit of it. Oh, the review bombing was bad. It went from one of the highest rated games to it just plummeted. 10,000 plus downvotes. It just completely fell apart. And what's interesting is the PSN requirement was mentioned when you bought the game, but it wasn't a requirement originally because of technical issues that they could it wasn't working initially. So they let people not have it, and they finally fixed it. And then they're announced, oh, by the way, you just have to do this, no big deal. There are a large number of countries where PSN's not available, either for whatever reason, whether it's illegal in the country or Sony just doesn't have the rights to do it or what. But there's like 177 countries where PSN's not even a choice. So they started rolling, people started requesting refunds because obviously when that went active, they would no longer have access to this game. Interestingly enough, this isn't the only game affected by this PSN thing. The director's cut of Ghost of Tsushima also requires you to sign into PSN. And unlike Sony backpedaling hard and saying, no, we're sorry, you don't need that anymore, we made a mistake on Helldivers 2, they haven't done that on the director's cut of Ghost of Tsushima, to the point where if all the people who had purchased that game who lived in those 177 countries have been refunded the cost of that game.
Okay. Interesting.
Because that game's not actually been released yet. The director's cut's not out yet.
Well, it's probably easier at that point to justify the refund then. Okay.
When they walked back the requirement, Sony stated that they are still learning what is best for PC players.
I'm a bit surprised Sony walked it back. I'm not a fan of people review bombing games like
I don't
this
like
to try
that
and
either.
affect change, so I don't approve of that. But I mean, I think Sony, this was a smart play on their part, especially given how well Helldivers has been doing.
Right. I mean, I think them stepping it back was smart. I find it surprising that they were surprised by the outrage.
Yeah. And maybe it's just they're not familiar enough with the PC market, really.
It could be because Xbox has been deep in the PC market for years, but Sony's always treated the PC market as that other
sort
thing.
Of tangential. But still, we've seen this happen with so many things. It wouldn't take a lot of observation to go, hey, this might... my guess is they probably were like, well, we always said this was going to be a requirement, so they just kind of were like, well, but everyone knows, right?
Right. I mean, I signed in with my PSN account, but I honestly...
But you already had one.
Right. So. A lot of PC players probably don't have PSN accounts. So...
But, Microsoft and Xbox, they don't always do the right thing, Tony.
Yeah, that's true.
At least not in the view of fans.
That's definitely true. And that's where we're going next, because Xbox has shut down Arcane Austin, Tango Gameworks, and Alpha Dog, that are all Bethesda Studios companies. They also merged Roundhouse Studios with ZeniMax Online Studios.
Yeah, so they're going to be supporting the one of those on. I can't remember which
Elder
online.
Scrolls Online.
Yeah, there we go. It was Elder Scrolls.
So
That's right. Yeah. Well, yeah, Bethesda. Yeah. Should have known.
But like Arcane Austin made the Dishonored games in Redfall. Well, Redfall crashed so hard that's that one's not
one
necessarily.
Doesn't surprise me.
But the Dishonored games did very well.
They did. I played both of them. So yeah, they were all right. I didn't love them, but they were. Obviously, they were good enough that I played both. But
right.
It's been a while since they were out too. I think this is more just a side effect of Redfall in their case. Than
in their case, yeah. The one that surprises me the most out of this was Tango Gameworks.
That was my favorite
because they did Hi-Fi Rush and The Evil Within,
and I loved Evil Within. I do highly. If you've never played them and you like survival horror, I definitely recommend. The first one is better than the second, but they're both good.
Yeah. And Hi-Fi Rush has been, Yeah, go ahead.
That's the thing. I was going to say, Tango's been getting a lot of praise for Hi-Fi Rush. I know it didn't do as, it wasn't like a massive sales record hit, but it's very critically acclaimed. And there's been some weird messaging I've seen where people, like Microsoft execs saying, we need more things that are like critically well received and win awards like Hi-Fi Rush. And it's like, but you closed the studio.
That's literally, that keep like 2 days after that.
That doesn't compute. for me. It doesn't compute. So I personally think that this decision on Tango GameWorks is incredibly short-sighted. But anyway, go on. I'll judge this all later.
Oh yeah,
I have thoughts.
yeah. No, I mean, well, you're right, because they did it. They had executives who said that, and it makes no sense. It's like, this is exactly the kind of thing people want. Alpha Dog did Doom roguelike on phones.
Yeah, I don't know
whatever. So I think the big interesting thing is going to be just how bad the layoffs are going to end up being total out, because in addition to all of these, they're also reducing headcounts in other sections of Bethesda.
Yeah. No, it's probably really bad. I mean, you noted the Roundhouse being merged with ZeniMax, and there was one other, I think, closure where part of the team was going to be put on Starfield DLC, but I'm assuming everything else is a termination, which is a lot. It's like, why buy all these studios and then start shutting this stuff down? And I know I think they've made some comments related to that regarding what they're trying to achieve, but I'll just note my short summary is, this feels very much like, especially now that they've bought Activision, that Microsoft execs are like, all right, Xbox, we expect you to step up and start performing more like other Microsoft stuff. And so Daddy is taking control now and not letting everything just be an Xbox decision. Like, they're running it through, like, it's big enough now. They have so much money in Xbox stuff, including all these studios, that corporate is intervening. And I worry that this is gonna hurt the creativity. But on the flip side, Xbox has struggled mightily with putting out very, titles that they get a lot of credit for being successful. So I could also sort of see why Microsoft thinks this is why they need to step in. But the slash and burn tactic feels very Embracer, and I don't like it.
It does feel very Embracer. I think it's a symptom of a much deeper problem, not just at Xbox.
Yeah, no, the game industry
but in
in
the
general.
game industry in general.
It's like when we were talking about pinball and all the pandemic buys. Well, when people were stuck at home, what'd they do? They played video games. But now they're going on trips.
Right. And I think a lot of it comes right down to the fact that companies don't believe that they're successful. Their shareholders don't believe they're successful unless they make even more than they did the year before.
They have to grow. They have
to grow. Always must grow. To the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep growing. Never going to stop. But there's no need for anything other than try. I mean, yes, it makes more money, and that's what they want to do, is make more money and make more money and make more money. But they're destroying their fan base. They're going to eventually get to a point where their fan base is going to start going away, just because, oh, this game was really good. Too bad everybody's been fired because as soon as the game was released. Oh, I really like this. I like the type of games this studio puts out. But if they're not, super popular, they're going to go away and those games will vanish. It's one of those things that I feel like this searching need to grow as opposed to just stay profitable. I mean, we're seeing companies that they're announcing, we made record profits this year, but we expected that we would have made $1 million more than we actually did. So we're firing 5,000 people. Has become the norm over the last several years. And I think that is a problem with the industry. I think that's a massive problem with the industry. How do you show record profits that immediately say, but they weren't as good as we wanted, so we're going to fire a bunch of people?
Well, I'd say that's what the service to the shareholders. I mean, I checked this morning, and my Microsoft stock is doing great.
I'm sure it is.
So it's, it's like you grow. They do stock buybacks to drive. It's all because it's not just about. I guess for a lot of these companies, it's not about giving people dividend payments. It's, hey, I bought this thing at $20 a share. I want it to be at $40 a share. So how quick is it going to be for you to get me there? And so we made money, but we didn't make enough. So we got to drop expenses so we make more money on paper, or they get cash reserves. And, and we know it's not just video games. Boeing has been notorious for this and the criticism of their quality control. And they've been spending the last 2 decades doing stock buybacks, because the less stock that's out there, the more valuable all the other stock is. So it's an easy way to drive up shareholder value.
Right.
But this isn't the Economic Gamers podcast, which would also be EGP. So we could be that.
We could do that.
But anyway.
Oh, that'd be a good a
that's
good
the whole
one
thing going on with the video game industry has been. But this was a sign for, I think, a lot of the people that worked at studios that Microsoft picked up, that just because Microsoft, with all its largesse, picked you up does not mean you're safe.
Right.
And it's not even that you're not safe if you do a bad job. Hi-Fi Rush is plenty proof of that.
It is.
So,
I mean, at least they had the excuse when they did the layoffs after the Activision pickup is, we're laying off redundant positions.
Sure. I wasn't surprised at that. But we've been seeing so many layoffs. I mean, we've joked about Embracer Group so many episodes now. But the whole industry, this is just hitting all facets of it.
Yeah, the sheer number of layoffs across the gaming industry it's insane.
Maybe Square will hire them.
I don't think so. Because Square has announced that a loss for their fiscal year of $140 million.
But they had that new Final Fantasy come out.
And the sales were soft.
Really? Wow.
Yes. All of the online reporting, their sales are soft. But that again, just like so much we've talked about, has the caveat. The first one came out during the pandemic.
There's nothing else to play.
So now that the follow-up has come out, well, it's not the pandemic anymore. So sales are obviously going to be lower. Mm-hmm. But sales have been soft on it. But they have abandoned a slew of in-development projects. They have not announced what they were. They just announced that they are reorganizing and retargeting what they're working on, and they've gotten rid of a whole bunch of projects that has resulted in a $140 million loss, which they've only had 2 games come out this year. The Foam Stars and the new Final Fantasy.
Okay.
Which is just, the super fancy remake of an old Final Fantasy.
Yes. Well, maybe they dropped all that stupid blockchain crap.
That's kind of what I hope.
I'm hoping they finally just quietly realized, you know what, this stupid blockchain thing is, we need to get out of this now. Just take the loss.
Now I am going to finish on a high note.
Yay!
I found I just had to find a couple things of good. Hades 2 has entered early access. I'm not going to play early access. I'm going to wait for the game to release.
Wait.
But I did watch one of the streamers I follow. His very first playthrough when he started up and went in, and it looks good.
I loved Hades,
and he said it plays just as snappy and responsive as Hades. It feels just as fun as Hades with some new mechanics and some different things.
Okay.
So that's good. It looks real clean. I really liked it. I'll wait for it to fully release though. And going back to Xbox decisions that have been made recently, it looks like their opening and release of several games on PlayStation is working out fairly well for them. Sea of Thieves became the 3rd most downloaded game on PlayStation in the U.S. in April, behind Helldivers 2 and Stellar Blade. In Europe, it was the 1st most downloaded
Wow,
game.
I didn't know it was so popular.
And Europe's numbers are weird because Europe's numbers were Sea of Thieves followed by Fallout 76, followed by Helldivers.
Okay. Well, the show is it's like Amazon's most successful original series ever is Fallout.
It's been huge. Stuff's everywhere. It's
so huge. Even Todd Howard's going out there now being like, yeah, we really do want to make more Fallout games faster. Like, you think?
Yeah.
You think Big Daddy Microsoft's kind of like, where's the game that we can now use to? I mean, I even downloaded because it's free with Prime, Fallout 76. I haven't played it yet, but I saw like New Vegas set a new Steam record of most concurrent players or something because I mean, people hunger.
And Fallout 4 did the same thing. It set a new most concurrent players.
People hunger.
People want it. That was a thing on Hades 2. It had over 100,000 concurrent players on the day they released into early access. That's more concurrent players on Hades 2 than Hades ever had. Hades' highest concurrent player on Steam was 34,000. But Hades was released for an extended period of time on the Epic Game Store before it came to Steam.
Yeah, that would affect the PC market quite a bit. Okay.
But that's where we stand. That's...
Okay, so there was some good news.
There was some good stuff. I had
mostly
some
darkness.
Good stuff in there. Mostly darkness. That is the world we're in. Is darkness.
Well, if you want to share your darkness with us, you can email us at eclecticgamerspodcast@gmail.com. We also are at facebook.com/eclecticgamerspodcast. If you want to join forces with the power of the mouse and do basic support, you can do so at patreon.com/eclectic_gamers.
We're also available on Twitch and Instagram as eclectic_gamers. And don't forget, we do have a Discord that the link for is in the show notes.
Yeah, you'll get it in the show notes, and you can join us on our Discord where we type chat all about all these things and other things.
And
we have all sorts of wide-ranging discussions in the Discord.
And weird meme pictures.
Yes. But until 2 weeks from now, my name is Dennis.
I'm Tony.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.